My name is Darcy Whitlock. I'm 41 years old. Last Thanksgiving, my younger sister slapped me across the face in front of 29 relatives, hard enough to leave a handprint on my jaw. My mother looked me dead in the eye and said, "Say you're sorry or get out tonight." My father didn't open his mouth. He walked to the front door, opened it, and stood there holding it like I was a stranger who'd overstayed her welcome. I walked out into the November cold without a single word. No tears, no slum, nothing. By 8:14 the next morning, my family woke up to a world they didn't recognize. And honestly, neither did I. If you're watching this, please subscribe. Drop your location and local time in the comments. I love knowing where you're listening from. Now let me take you back to last November, the Wednesday before Thanksgiving, when I pulled into my parents' driveway in Galena, Illinois. Population 3,400. For the last drive home I'd ever take down that two-lane road. The drive from Chicago to Galena runs about 3 hours and 14 minutes if US 20 East behaves. I pulled in around 4:11 in the afternoon. My trunk was loaded with 3 catering trays from a Loop restaurant near my office. Turkey, sides, desserts, the full spread. I've been paying for Thanksgiving at my parents' house for 8 years. Christmas and Easter too. Nobody asked me to stop. Tiffany's white Range Rover was already in the driveway. When I walked through the side door, she was standing in the kitchen arranging a cheese board like she was hosting a segment on morning television. Mom was right behind her, adjusting the napkin rings. "There she is," Mom said, barely looking up. "Put the food on the counter. No hug, no. How was the drive? Just directions." Tiffany waved a cracker at me. "You're late." "I'm not late. I told you 4 o'clock. It's 4:11. I started unloading the trays. That's when I heard Mom in the living room, talking to Aunt Hetty. "Tiffany's been here since noon. She handles everything for us, you know." I looked around the kitchen. The new quartz countertops I'd paid for last spring, $11,400. The recessed lighting I'd wired the electrician's deposit on, $4,200. The back door with the glass insert, $1,650. Me, all me. Not a single person in this house has ever said, "Darcy paid for that." It's always, "We finally got around to updating the kitchen." I set the last tray down and noticed an envelope on the edge of the counter near the toaster. It was from Cumberland Pacific Federal Bank, the lender on my parents' second mortgage. The envelope was sealed, but the flap was peeled at the corner like someone had opened it and resealed it. I picked it up, turned it over. My fingers wanted to tear it open. "Don't touch that." Tiffany was behind me. "That's Mom and Dad's mail." I put it down. I didn't forget it. I should tell you about Grandma Pearl. She raised me more than my parents did, and that is not an exaggeration. When I was 6, Dad picked up a second shift at the Galena hydraulics plant. Mom started cleaning the offices at the high school on weekends. Tiffany was 3, still a baby. So I went to Grandma Pearl's brick house on Stagecoach Road every morning before school, every afternoon until dark. Pearl was the children's section librarian at Galena Public Library for 31 years. Her hands always smelled like brown sugar and library paste. She taught me how to read a budget by age 11, how to shake a man's hand, how to tell the difference between being kind and being used. She kept a leather notebook with gold-embossed letters that said Pearl W. 1972. She read me 407 storybook chapters. During the summer, I broke my collarbone in 1989. When I was 22, I sat beside her hospital bed at Mercy Medical Center in Dubuque and held her hand. The monitors beeped in a slow rhythm I still hear sometimes when a room gets too quiet. 3 weeks before she died, she looked at me clear-eyed and slid a sealed manila envelope across the bed tray. Her oval emerald ring sat on her finger, the nick on the platinum band still visible from where she dropped it on the tile floor in this same hospital. "Keep this safe, Darcy girl. Marjorie will know when to use it. Keep them together. They don't know how." I took the envelope. I never opened it. I gave it to Marjorie Hollister Strand the week after Pearl's funeral. Marjorie was Pearl's attorney for 40 years. She told me to forget it existed and to live my life. I tried. For 19 years I kept that promise to Pearl, the part I could see. I co-signed the second mortgage on my parents' house when the first one wasn't enough to cover repairs. $142,000. I've made every payment for 11 years. I paid for the kitchen and the master bath remodel. $55,700. The new roof and gutter system after the ice storm, $21,400. The deposit on Tiffany's pet grooming salon, Tiffany & Co. Grooming on Main Street plus first-year inventory. $58,500. I've sent $1,450 a month to cover mom's medical co-pays and dad's supplemental insurance every single month for 11 years. You can do the math. It's over $397,000. I never asked for a receipt. I never asked for a thank you card. I did it because Pearl had asked me to hold this family together, and I thought money was the glue. Here's the thing nobody in my family knows I think about. I'm a co-signer on that second mortgage. My name is on the deed. It's right there in black and white at the Joe Daviess County Recorder Office. I didn't think that detail mattered. It was about to matter more than anything. Wednesday evening, the house filled up fast. Aunt Hetty Whitlock Linden and her family, Uncle Wesley Forsythe and his wife, the Petersons from across the road, 29 people by 7 o'clock, and the house smelled like cinnamon and roasted garlic. Dad sat in the recliner he'd had since 1998, remote in hand, watching the pregame. He nodded when I walked past. That was it. A nod. I'd driven 3 hours. Mom pulled Tiffany around the living room like a show pony. You all know my Tiffany. Running her own business now. She's doing so well. Tiffany smiled, tossed her hair, told everyone about the new boutique line she was launching for terrier coats. She made it sound like she was expanding. I happened to know the grooming salon had lost money 4 months straight because I'd seen the bank statements. They'd crossed my desk when I was handling the second-year loan paperwork. Aunt Hetty's daughter, Bryn, 16, asked me what I did. Before I could answer, Mom cut in. Oh, Darcy works downtown. Some office job. I'm Director of Business Development at Hadley and Bristol Commercial Construction on West Adams Street, Chicago. I manage portfolios worth more than this house and every house on this block combined. But sure, some office job. Aunt Delphine Whitlock Reeve, Dad's older sister, 71 years old, silver-bobbed hair, retired Galena High School counselor for 38 years, was sitting in the corner chair. She caught my gaze and shook her head. Just a millimeter of movement. But I saw it. She saw me. Later, in the hallway near the bathroom, Tiffany grabbed my arm. Her grip was tight. Her voice was a whisper, but her tone was a command. Don't mention the loan. I told Mom it's paid off. I stared at her. It's not paid off. Just smile and stay out of my way. That's all you have to do. She walked away. I stood in the hallway alone. Let me lay out the numbers, because numbers don't lie and families do. Second mortgage on my parents' house, $142,000. I co-signed. 11 years of payments out of my checking account. Kitchen and master bath remodel, $55,700. New roof and gutter system, $21,400. Tiffany's grooming salon deposit and inventory, $58,500. Mom and Dad's monthly medical copays for 11 years, $1,450 a month. That's $191,400. Give or take. Grand total, $397,000. The math was settled before any of them noticed it had started. I was sitting on the pull-out couch in the den Wednesday night, listening to the house settle around me. Everyone else had gone to bed an hour ago. I was doing what I always do after a visit, running the mental ledger, wondering why I kept writing checks to people who treated me like furniture. I didn't do it for gratitude. I did it for Pearl. But here's the part that kept me up that night. Tiffany had been telling Mom and Dad that the financial help came from family savings, some vague collective pot that doesn't exist. She had repackaged my money as everyone's money. She had erased me from the equation so she could stand in the kitchen and take credit for a house she's never put a dollar into. And my parents had never questioned it. Not once. Because questioning it would mean admitting their younger daughter hadn't contributed anything, and their older daughter, the one who'd left, had been keeping them afloat. Easier to believe the lie. I rolled onto my side and stared at the wall. The baseboards were new. I'd paid for those too. Somewhere in this house there was an envelope from Cumberland Pacific Federal Bank with information I didn't have yet. And Tiffany didn't want me to see it. That should have told me everything. Thanksgiving morning. I was up at 6:14 before anyone else. Old habit. Pearl used to say the person who started the coffee owned the day. The kitchen was cold. Gray light through the window over the sink. I filled the pot, hit brew, leaned against the counter while it dripped. That's when I saw it again. The envelope. Same spot near the toaster. But this time it had been opened, the flap torn clean, and it wasn't on the counter anymore. It was in the recycling bin, half buried under a Krusty's pancake mix box. I shouldn't have looked. I looked. The torn flap was facing up. Through the opening, I could see the top of a document. Bold header, deed transfer notification. My pulse jumped. I pulled out my phone, not to document anything, just reflex. The way you photograph a fender bender before your brain catches up. I snapped one picture of the header at 6:14 a.m., just the header. Then I shoved the envelope back under the cereal box. Deed transfer on a property I co-signed. My hands were shaking and not from the cold. I heard footsteps on the stairs. I slid my phone into my back pocket and grabbed a potato peeler from the drawer. When Mom walked in, I was standing at the sink with a 5-pound bag of russets. "You're up early," she said. She was in her bathrobe, hair still pinned from the night before. "Good, peel the potatoes. Already started." She didn't say thank you. She didn't ask how I'd slept. She poured herself coffee from the pot I'd made and shuffled to the table with yesterday's crossword. I peeled potatoes and thought about that document. Deed transfer notification. It could be routine. A refinance update. A tax adjustment. It could be nothing. But Tiffany had told me not to touch that envelope, and Tiffany never cares about nothing. I peeled the last potato and dropped it into the pot. The water splashed and settled. I stared at the gray skin curling off the blade. If my name had been removed from that deed and I didn't know that it had, but if, then I'd been paying $142,000 into a house I no longer had a legal claim to. That isn't a disagreement. That's theft, and it gets worse. If Tiffany had put her name on the deed and used the equity I'd built to open a new line of credit, a HELOC, a second lien, anything, then I could be on the hook for debt I didn't authorize. My credit score, my borrowing power, my professional reputation. Staying silent wasn't peace. Staying silent was a signature on a blank check. But it was Thanksgiving, and I could hear people moving upstairs, car doors shutting in the driveway. The Petersons were early. Aunt Delphine's voice in the hallway, warm and scratchy. I had two choices. Keep peeling potatoes or start peeling back the lies. I dried my hands on the towel. I chose peace for now, because Pearl's voice was louder than my suspicion, and I'd spent 19 years honoring the woman who raised me. One more day wasn't going to break me. "Darcy, get the good china from the hutch," Mom called from the dining room. "And make sure Tiffany's place setting is by Dad." Of course it was. I carried the plates to the table, 29 settings. I counted my own and placed it at the far end near the kitchen door, the seat closest to the exit. Tiffany walked in freshly done up, heels clicking on the hardwood I'd refinished. She didn't look at me. She looked past me. "What's wrong with you?" she said. "You look like someone died." She laughed. Reed Roosh passed through the room without a word. The table stretched wall to wall. Mom had brought out the leaf extension and pushed the couch back to make room. 29 chairs, dining chairs, folding chairs, the piano bench, every seat filled. Dad sat at the head, Mom beside him, Tiffany and Reed on his other side, front and center. I was at the far end, wedged between Aunt Delphine and a cousin's husband, whose name I couldn't remember. Mom tapped her glass. "Tiffany, would you like to say grace?" Tiffany stood. She folded her hands. She closed her eyes just long enough for it to look spiritual. "Thank you, Lord, for this family. Thank you for Mom and Dad and everything they do for us. Thank you for Reed for standing by me. Thank you for everyone at this table." Everyone, a word that technically included me but functionally didn't. "Amen," the room said. I looked down at my plate. Aunt Delphine's hand found mine under the table. She squeezed once. The food circulated. Turkey platter, mashed potatoes, cranberry sauce. Voices stacked on top of each other. Someone's kid spilled juice. Uncle Wesley argued about the Bears' defensive line. The Petersons had brought a pumpkin pie nobody asked for. I ate. I smiled when someone talked to me. I passed the gravy, but I was watching Tiffany. She was at the center of every conversation. She laughed too loud. She touched Mom's arm. She told a story about a customer at the salon, and the whole table leaned in. She kept glancing at me, quick, sharp glances, like she was checking whether I was still in my seat, whether I was staying quiet. I took a sip of water and met her eyes across the table. She looked away first. After dinner, the table fragmented. Some people drifted to the living room. Kids scattered to the basement. The men collected around the TV. I was carrying plates to the kitchen when I heard Tiffany's voice rise over the chatter. She was in the living room, perched on the arm of the sofa, holding her right hand out like she was modeling for a catalog. "Mom gave it to me last week," she was saying. "Isn't it beautiful?" I stopped in the doorway. I knew that ring. Oval emerald, thin platinum band, a tiny nick on the setting where Pearl had dropped it on hospital tile in 1989. She used to let me try it on when I was little. It swallowed my finger every time. Pearl had told me that ring was mine. She'd said it in front of Mom. She'd said it the summer before she died. "Where did you get that?" My voice came out flatter than I'd intended. Tiffany smiled. "Mom gave it to me. She said Grandma would have wanted me to have it." I looked at Mom. Mom nodded. "Tiffany's here every day. She deserves it." The room went quiet, that particular quiet where everyone pretends they didn't hear something heavy. Aunt Hetty studied her wineglass. Uncle Wesley coughed. Reed Roosh was sitting in the corner. He was watching me, his jaws tight. He looked like a man holding a secret he didn't want. "Okay," I said. One word. I turned and walked back to the kitchen with the plates still in his hands. I set them in the sink. The water ran. I watched it fill around the china, the good china. The china Pearl had picked out for this house in 1978. Okay was all I had. Because the alternative was a truth that would have split that room down the middle, and I wasn't ready for that. Not yet. 20 minutes later, I was standing near the fireplace, talking to Aunt Delphine about her garden, trying to feel normal. Tiffany settled into the center of the couch and started telling stories. Old stories. Childhood stories. The kind that sound funny if you weren't there. "Remember when Darcy cried at her science fair because nobody came? She was looking at the room, not at me. She made this whole volcano. Then she sobbed when Mom had to work. She always needed so much attention. I felt the blood rise in my neck. That isn't how it happened." Tiffany tilted her head. "See? Still so sensitive." "Darcy, don't start," Mom said from the armchair. Sharp, final. "Not today." "Girls, enough," Dad said from the recliner, eyes still on the screen. But his enough didn't land on Tiffany. It landed on me. It always lands on me because I'm the one who responds. Tiffany never has to stop because nobody ever tells her to start. She kept going. Another story. Another revision of history where she was the responsible one and I was the fragile one. The room listened. A few people laughed nervously. Most looked at their drinks. Then she leaned forward, voice sweet as caramel, and said, "I just want us to be a family. Is that so hard for you?" 29 people in that room. Not one of them heard me. Not one of them heard how the word family sounded, coming from a woman wearing my dead grandmother's emerald ring, sitting in a house I'd been paying for. Aunt Delphine caught my eye. She mouthed 2 words. "Not here." I clenched my jaw. I nodded, but the air in the room had changed, and Tiffany knew it. I could see it in the way she wouldn't stop talking. I needed water. That was all I needed. A glass of water and 2 minutes where nobody was looking at me. I excused myself, walked down the hallway, locked the bathroom door, and sat on the edge of the tub with my phone. Not to hide, to breathe. And to check my email because that's what I do when I need to feel like myself. I work. 3 unread messages. 2 from colleagues' holiday pleasantries. The 3rd was from Marjorie Hollister Strand. Marjorie is a retired estate attorney out of Hollister Strand and Associates on Church Street, Burlington, Vermont. She drafted Pearl's medical proxy in 1993. She drafted Pearl's will in 2005. She's been on the receiving end of 14 of my own holiday cards in the years since Pearl died. Smart, thorough, the kind of woman who uses periods in text messages and never sends an emoji. I'd emailed her that morning before the drive, before the potatoes, before any of this, with a photo of the deed transfer header I'd taken from the recycling bin. Just a photo with a 2-line message. "This is my parents' property. I'm co-signer on the 2nd mortgage. Can you look into this?" Her reply, time-stamped 4:11 p.m. "Got your email about the property. Something doesn't look right. Call me Monday." Marjorie does not say something doesn't look right unless the ground is moving under you. I've known her for 19 years through Pearl's estate. She is measured, precise. If she's concerned, I should be concerned. A 2nd message, sent 4 minutes later. "Don't sign anything. Don't agree to anything. Call me Monday." 2 messages. No pleasantries, no happy Thanksgiving. Just instructions. I stared at the screen until the backlight dimmed. Then I splashed water on my face, unlocked the door, and walked back toward the living room. I didn't know what Marjorie had found, but I knew the shape of it. The way you know a storm is coming before you see the clouds. You feel the pressure drop. I stepped into the hallway and nearly collided with Reed Roosh. He was standing alone, leaning against the wall opposite the bathroom, arms crossed. His tie was loosened. His face looked like a man who'd been arguing with himself and losing. "Darcy," his voice was low. "I want you to know I told her not to do it." I stopped. "Do what?" He opened his mouth, closed it. His eyes darted toward the living room where Tiffany's laugh cut through the noise like a siren. "Reed." Tiffany's voice. "Sharp. Get in here." He flinched. Actually flinched. Then he looked at me straight on, no blinking, and said, "Just check your mail when you get home. The real mail. Not email. Reed." Tiffany again. He pushed off the wall, paused. "I'm sorry." Then he was gone, rounding the corner into the living room where Tiffany was waiting for him, the way a dog waits for a squirrel. Check your mail. Reed knew something, and whatever he knew, it had scared him enough to warn me, but not enough to say it out loud. That told me two things. The information was serious, and Tiffany was the reason he couldn't share it. I pulled out my phone. Marjorie's message was still on the screen. "Don't sign anything. And now, Reed, check your mail." Two people, two warnings, neither willing to give me the full picture. I slipped the phone back into my pocket. My fingers brushed the edge of my car keys. For the first time all day, I thought about driving home, just getting in the car and going, but Pearl's voice held me in place. One more hour, just one more. Mom wanted a photo. Of course she did. She wanted one every year, and every year she orchestrated it like a Broadway director working with community theater actors. Everyone by the fireplace, Calvin Center, Tiffany right here next to me, Reed behind Tiffany, Delphine on the end. People shuffled into place, the fire crackled. Someone's kid was crying in the basement. Uncle Wesley held up the phone camera and tried to figure out the timer. "Darcy, stand in the back." I stepped behind the second row. I could see the top of Mom's head in front of me. Tiffany's highlighted hair, Reed's stiff shoulders. Aunt Delphine reached back and tugged my sleeve, pulling me forward. "Come up here, honey. You're hidden." "Delphine, you're blocking Tiffany." Mom didn't even turn around. Delphine let go of my sleeve. She gave me a look, the kind that says I'm sorry and I see you at the same time. "Say Thanksgiving," Uncle Wesley called. The shutter clicked. I was at the edge of the frame, half cut by the border, 1 foot in, 1 foot out. The perfect metaphor for my place in this family. If you've ever been the person your family blames no matter what you do, drop a comment. I need to know I'm not the only one. Now you're caught up. I was standing in the gap between the coffee table and the sofa. My arm had just brushed Tiffany's. A nothing touch. The kind that happens when 29 people share 1,200 square feet of living room. Tiffany's hand connected with my face before I finished my next breath. The sound was sharper than I expected. Not a thud, a crack. Open palm, full swing, right across my left cheek. My head snapped sideways, my ear rang. I tasted something metallic at the corner of my lip. "Are you blind, or do you just not think?" Her voice filled the room like a smoke alarm. High, shrill, every syllable weaponized. The room froze. Uncle Wesley's beer bottle stopped halfway to his mouth. Aunt Hetty's hand covered Bryn's eyes. A kid near the TV dropped a crayon. The furnace kicked on, and the sound of it was deafening because everything else had stopped. I straightened my head. I felt the heat spreading across my cheekbone. My left eye watered, not tears. Just the body's reflex to being struck. I blinked it away. I looked at Tiffany. Her chest was heaving. Her hand was still raised. Not to hit again, because she hadn't decided what to do with it yet. Her eyes were wide, not with regret, with adrenaline. 29 people saw it. Not a single one of them spoke. The silence was so heavy I could hear the ice settling in someone's glass across the room. I could hear the clock on the mantel. I could hear my own heartbeat, thick and slow, like it was pumping through mud. I stood there. I didn't raise my hand. I didn't step back. I didn't say a word. Because the next voice that broke that silence was going to tell me everything I needed to know about my family. Mom moved first. She crossed the room in 3 steps. I thought for one stupid, hopeful second that she was coming to me. That she'd seen her daughter get slapped, and she was going to do what mothers are supposed to do. She stopped in front of me, looked me up and down. Her mouth was a thin line. "Say you're sorry, or get out tonight." She was talking to me. The words hit harder than the slap. I felt them land in my chest, somewhere behind the sternum, in the place where you keep the last shred of belief that your mother will choose you. "She hit me," I said. "You provoked her, you always do." I looked at Dad. Calvin was already standing. He didn't say a word, not one word. He walked to the front door, opened it. The November wind rushed in, scattering a napkin off the side table. He stood there, hand on the knob, holding the door open like he was taking out the trash. "Calvin, for God's sake." Aunt Delphine started from the corner. Dad didn't look at her. He didn't look at me. He looked at the floor. Tiffany was on the couch now. Her eyes were wet. Her lower lip trembled perfectly, precisely, the way it always did when she needed to be the victim. "She walked into me on purpose," she whispered, just loud enough for the room. Mom turned back to me. "This is my house. Apologize to your sister." I looked at the open door. The porch light was on. I could see the driveway. My car, the road that led to US 20 East. The 3 hours back to Chicago. I looked at the room. 29 faces. Some horrified, some uncomfortable. None of them stepping forward. The door was open. The choice was made. Not by me, by them. I picked up my coat from the chair by the window. I took my keys from the hook by the door. I didn't rush. I didn't stumble. I walked like I was leaving a conference room after a meeting that had run long. Aunt Delphine stood up. Dad cut her off with a look. Not a word, just a look. And she sat back down. Her face was red. Her hands were shaking. I passed Dad at the door. He was still holding it. His knuckles were white on the knob. I stopped for just a moment, close enough to smell the aftershave he'd worn since I was 5. He didn't look up. I stepped onto the porch. The cold hit my face, the same cheek Tiffany had hit. It stung in a different way, a clean way. Behind me the door closed. I heard the deadbolt turn. Click. I walked to my car. The gravel crunched. The driveway was full. 6 cars, maybe 7. Mine was at the end near the road because I was the last one to arrive. Fitting. I sat in the driver's seat. I didn't start the engine. I put my hands on the wheel at 10 and 2. I looked at the house. The windows glowed warm and yellow. I could see shapes moving behind the curtains. 1 minute. 2. 3. I started the car, pulled out, turned left onto the county road. The house shrank in the mirrors, then disappeared behind the tree line. 3 hours to Chicago. I didn't turn on the radio. I didn't call anyone. I didn't cry. I just drove. The lines on the road came one after another. The dark filled the windshield. Somewhere past a Rockford gas station, my phone buzzed. Aunt Delphine. "Honey, I'm so sorry. That was wrong. All of it. I should have stood up." I read it at a red light. I didn't respond. Not yet. I pulled into my building on West Randolph at 11:32 p.m. The parking garage was quiet. A street lamp buzzed. The air smelled like cold pavement and somebody's late dinner. I sat in the car for a moment with the engine off, staring at the elevator door. Then I remembered what Reed had said. "Check your mail." I walked to the cluster of mailboxes by the lobby. Unit 11C. I turned the key and pulled out 3 days' worth of envelopes. Junk, a credit card offer, a water bill, and one from the Joe Daviess County Recorder Office, postmarked 5 days ago. I tore it open under the lobby light. It was a certified copy of a deed transfer. My parents' Galena property. The document showed the transfer had been recorded 3 weeks ago. My name, Darcy Whitlock, had been removed from the deed. A new name had been added. Tiffany Whitlock Rausch. At the bottom 4 signatures. Calvin Whitlock, Rita Whitlock, Tiffany Whitlock Rausch, and a 4th. Darcy Whitlock. I stared at my name. My name in handwriting that was not mine. The loops too round. The capital D didn't match. Someone had signed my name on a legal document without my knowledge and without my consent. Someone had forged my signature. I walked into my condo. I didn't take off my coat. I sat at the kitchen table, opened my laptop, and scanned every page, front, back, margins. I emailed the entire package to Marjorie Hollister Strand with 1 line. They forged my signature. Call me in the morning. I sat in the dark. The radiator ticked. The refrigerator clicked on. A truck passed on Randolph. At 8:14 sharp, my phone rang. "Darcy, this is fraud. We file Monday." Monday morning. That was when everything changed. Monday 9 a.m. I was sitting across from Marjorie's partner, Eliza Hollander, in a glass conference room on the 11th floor of a building 2 blocks from my office. Marjorie was on video conference from Burlington, Vermont, a watercolor of a New England barn behind her. Eliza is 51, dark suit, no jewelry except a wedding band. She had a file in front of her that was already thick. "I pulled the records Friday night," Marjorie said. She did not look down at the papers. She knew them. "Your name was on the original deed as co-signer when the second mortgage was recorded 11 years ago. 3 weeks ago, a new deed was filed, removing you and adding Tiffany Whitlock Rausch as co-owner. Without my signature," I said. That's the thing. Eliza slid a photocopy across the table. There is a signature. It's just not yours. I looked at it. The fake Darcy Whitlock stared back. Loopy. Rushed. Nothing like my handwriting. There's more, Marjorie said. She took off her reading glasses. After the deed transfer was recorded, someone opened a home equity line of credit, a HELOC, secured by the property, $97,500. The application lists Tiffany Whitlock Rausch as borrower. Cumberland Pacific Federal Bank approved it based on the equity your 11 years of payments built. Where did the $97,500 go? Eliza nodded. I had a forensic accountant friend run a preliminary trace over the weekend. The numbers are clean. $44,200 went to a salon rent account for Tiffany & Co. Grooming. $22,800 paid off 3 personal credit cards in Tiffany's name. $14,500 paid a wedding renewal venue deposit, scheduled for next May. $11,000 went toward a Range Rover lease, 6 months. $5,000 was withdrawn in cash. Untraced, I sat back. The chair creaked. Outside the window, Chicago traffic crawled through a cold December morning. Marjorie, what are we looking at? She folded her hands on screen. 4s on a recorded instrument. Real estate fraud. Potentially identity-related crimes if she used your personal information on the HELOC application. In Illinois, forgery on a recorded instrument is a felony. Your sister forged your signature on a legal document. That's a felony. The word sat in the room like a dropped plate. What do we do? Marjorie looked into the camera for a long second. Darcy. I drafted your grandmother's medical proxy in 1993. I drafted her will in 2005. I have been on the receiving end of 14 Thanksgiving cards from her, mostly handwritten. She predicted this, not the specifics, the shape. She told me the words she used. She said, "Daughter Rita will manage things in her favor when I'm gone," she said. Please be ready. I have been ready for 19 years. We file Monday. Eliza drafted 3 cease and desist letters before lunch. 1 to Tiffany Whitlock Rausch, 1 to Calvin and Rita Whitlock, 1 to Cumberland Pacific Federal Bank. The language was clean, direct, and devastating. It demanded an immediate freeze on the HELOC, restoration of the original deed with my name, a full accounting of all funds withdrawn, and notice that a criminal complaint would be filed if compliance was not achieved within 15 days. 15 days, Marjorie said. That's generous. While Eliza printed the letters, I pulled out my phone. I opened my banking app. For 11 years, I had automatic transfers set up, $1,450 a month to my parents' joint account. The mortgage payment on the second lien, a quarterly transfer of $4,200 to the salon business account. I canceled them all, every single one. It took 4 minutes. 11 years of financial support erased with 6 taps on a screen. Marjorie watched me from the screen. You sure? They forged my name and stole my equity. I'm not funding that. She nodded. Once we file the complaint with the Joe Daviess County Recorder Office, the deed transfer gets flagged. A lis pendens goes on the property. That's public notice of a legal dispute. Nobody can sell, transfer, or refinance until it's resolved. Will my parents face charges? They signed the deed under their own names, Eliza said. If they claim they didn't know about the forged signature, they'll need to show Tiffany misled them. Either way, someone is in legal trouble. I stared at the letters on Eliza's desk. 3 envelopes, 3 relationships detonated with 14 pages of legal language. I'm not punishing anyone, I said. I'm protecting myself. That's exactly what you're doing, Marjorie said. We hung up. I shook Eliza's hand. I drove back to my office. My phone was silent for the first time in months. It wouldn't be silent for long. Wednesday, 5 days after Thanksgiving. My phone rang at 7:42 a.m., Mom. I almost didn't answer. But I'd been waiting for this call the way you wait for test results. Wanting to know. Dreading to know. Darcy, something's wrong with the bank. Her voice was tight, not angry yet. Confused. The payment didn't go through this month. There's no error, Mom. I canceled it. Silence, the kind that has weight. I could hear the kitchen clock ticking through the phone. I could hear Dad breathing somewhere nearby. What do you mean, you canceled it? I mean, I stopped paying for a house I no longer own. What are you talking about? Her voice pitched up. This is your family. A family that forged my signature and stole my equity. You'll be hearing from my attorney. The silence broke. Mom's voice cracked open like ice on a pond. You ungrateful after everything you've. What, Mom? Name one thing. She couldn't. The pause stretched. I heard her breath catch. Then Dad took the phone. His voice was low and tired. The way it always sounds when he's been drafted into a fight he'd rather watch from the recliner. Darcy, don't do this to your mother. I didn't do anything to her, Dad. Check who did. I hung up. I set the phone on the counter, screen down. It buzzed 18 times over the next 4 hours. Tiffany, Mom. Tiffany again. Read once. Mom. Tiffany. 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 I didn't answer a single one. I made coffee. I ate toast. I sat at my kitchen table and watched the December sun crawl across the floor, and for the first time in 11 years, I didn't feel the weight of that house on my back. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. If this story is hitting close to home, drop a comment. What happens next is the part nobody expected. Thursday, the FedEx arrived in Galena. I knew because Tiffany called me at 11:08 a.m. and she was crying. Not the theatrical crying she does for Mom, real crying, the ugly kind, wet and ragged and afraid. You can't do this to me. I'm your sister. You forged my name on a legal document. That isn't a family matter, Tiffany. That's a crime. Mom and Dad told me to do it. They said you wouldn't care. I closed my eyes. There it was, the blame shift. The same move she'd been making since we were kids. Break something. Then point at someone else. Then they can explain that to the court. Darcy, please. I'll fix it. I'll put your name back. I'll close the HELOC. Just don't file. You had 3 weeks to fix it. You spent $97,500 of my equity instead. She made a sound, half sob, half choke. For the first time in my life, I heard my sister stripped of her performance. No audience, no stage. Just a woman who realized the safety net she'd been standing on was made of someone else's money. And it was gone. You're going to destroy this family, she whispered. I didn't destroy it. I just stopped rebuilding it. I hung up, I opened my laptop, I emailed Marjorie one word, proceed. Then I sat in my apartment and listened to the quiet. No more phone calls to screen, no more checks to write, no more potatoes to peel in a kitchen that didn't want me. The quiet was strange, it wasn't peaceful. Not yet. It was the silence after a surgeon cuts the last stitch, and before you know whether the patient will breathe on her own. But it was mine. For the first time in 19 years, the silence belonged to me. Monday, 1 week after Thanksgiving, Marjorie filed the formal complaint with the Joe Daviess County Recorder Office in Galena. She didn't rush. She didn't grandstand. Eliza walked into the office at 9 a.m. with a manila folder. Copies of the original deed showing my name. The fraudulent deed transfer with the forged signature. Bank statements proving 11 years of mortgage payments from my account. A notarized affidavit from me confirming I'd never authorized the transfer. By noon, the county placed a Liz Pendens on the property. That meant the house was flagged in the public record. No one could sell it. No one could refinance it. No one could pull another line of credit against it. The property was frozen until the dispute was resolved. Eliza also sent formal notice to Cumberland Pacific Federal Bank. Under federal lending regulations, a lender must verify the identity and consent of all parties on a deed before issuing a secured credit line. They hadn't. They had approved $97,500 based on a forged signature. The bank's compliance office responded within 4 hours. The HELOC was suspended. Tiffany could no longer withdraw funds since. Marjorie called me at 3. The county just froze the deed. Your sister cannot touch that house. I was sitting in my office. Through the glass wall, I could see my team working on a bid for a new hospital wing in Evanston. Normal life. Real work. The kind of work where you build things instead of watching them get stolen. What happens next? I asked. We gave them 15 days to comply with the cease and desist. If they restore the deed and close the HELOC, this stays civil. If they don't, we go criminal. 15 days, 2 weeks, and a day. I thanked her. I hung up. I went back to my blueprints. The clock started ticking. The dominoes started falling. On day 3, the news broke in Galena. Tiffany had been using the HELOC to cover the salon's operating costs. Rent, supplies, payroll for 3 employees, the wedding renewal venue deposit. She wasn't just borrowing against the house. She was breathing through it. The HELOC was the only thing keeping the doors open. When the bank froze the line, the money stopped. No warning, no grace period. Just a dead account and a landlord who wanted $5,500 by the 10th of the month. She couldn't pay. Of course she couldn't. She'd been running the salon at a loss for over a year. The boutique line, The expansion plans, the stories she told at the Thanksgiving table, fiction. All of it. The salon was a sinking ship, and the HELOC was the bilge pump. The landlord posted a 10-day notice on the salon door. Pay or vacate. I know all this because Reed Rouge texted me. One long message sent at 2 in the morning, full of typos and exhaustion. She used the HELOC for everything. Rent, credit cards, Range Rover, everything. She told me it was covered. I told her not to do the deed thing. She said if I said anything, she'd tell your parents I cheated. I didn't cheat. I just didn't fight hard enough. You stole from the one person keeping us afloat. That's what I told her. She threw a plate at me. I read the message twice. Then I put my phone down and went to bed. I didn't feel satisfied. I didn't feel vindicated. I felt the way you feel when a building you've been propping up with your own body finally collapses. Relieved that you stepped away. Sick at the sound of it falling. Tiffany called me 6 times that week. I let everyone go to voicemail. Day 9, Dad called. I almost didn't recognize his voice. It was thinner, older, like the last 10 days had added 10 years. Darcy girl, this has gone too far. He hadn't called me Darcy girl since I was 12. The sound of it cracked something in my chest. Something I thought I'd already broken clean. Dad, she forged my signature. She made a mistake. People make mistakes. You held the door open for me, Dad, on Thanksgiving. You didn't say a word. Silence. I could hear the furnace through the phone. I could hear Mom's TV in the background. Some game show with a too cheerful host. I didn't know what to say, he said. That's the problem, Dad. You never do. More silence. Then carefully, like he was handling something fragile, what do you want from us? I want the deed restored. I want the HELOC closed. And I want Tiffany to face the legal consequences of what she did. That isn't revenge, Dad. That's the law. She's my sister. She committed a felony against me. Being family doesn't change that. His breath shuddered. It was the sound of a man who'd spent 68 years avoiding hard conversations, now standing at the edge of one he couldn't walk away from. If you do this, your mother will never forgive you. I closed my eyes. I saw him at the door, hand on the knob, cold air flooding the room, his daughter's cheek still red. He'd chosen silence then. He was choosing negotiation now. Both were the same thing, avoiding the truth. She hasn't forgiven me for leaving home at 18, Dad. I think I'll survive. He hung up, no goodbye, just the click of a man who'd run out of arguments he'd never had. Day 15. Deadline. Marjorie sent a check-in email at 9 a.m. Any response from the other side? Nothing. No attorney contact, no compliance, no deed restoration, no HELOC closure. Nothing but silence and Tiffany's Facebook post from 3 days ago. Some people use money to control their family. I feel sorry for anyone who thinks love has a price tag. I screenshotted it and forwarded it to Marjorie. Her reply: she's building a narrative. We file tomorrow. The next morning, Marjorie and Eliza submitted a criminal complaint to the Joe Daviess County State's Attorney's Office in Galena. The charges: forgery on a recorded instrument and real estate fraud. Both felonies. The complaint included the forged deed, bank records showing unauthorized HELOC draws, my affidavit, and a handwriting comparison prepared by a certified document examiner confirming the signature was not mine. The state's attorney's office assigned a case number within 48 hours, 26-CR-3147. I was sitting in my car outside the office when Marjorie called with the update. December sky, bare trees. The heater running. It's filed, she said. The state's attorney has it. Okay, you okay? I looked out the windshield. A woman was walking into the building across the street, carrying coffee, scrolling her phone, living a Tuesday like it was nothing. I envied her for about 3 seconds. I gave them 15 days, Marjorie. She gave me a slap and a forged signature. Marjorie didn't respond to that. She didn't need to. I sat in the car for a few more minutes after we hung up. I thought about Pearl. I thought about the promise made to a woman who'd loved me enough to ask me to hold together a family that didn't deserve it. I kept them warm for 19 years. They burned the house down themselves. I pulled out of the lot and drove to work. Saturday, January 17, 2026, Galena Public Library, 11:47 a.m. through 1:14 p.m. 6 weeks earlier, the Hadley and Bristol Foundation, my firm's philanthropic arm, had pledged $185,000 to renovate the children's reading wing at Galena Public Library and to name it in honor of Pearl Whitlock. I'd routed the donation quietly through the foundation. None of my family knew. The library board had announced the dedication ceremony 2 weeks before Thanksgiving. Family invitations had gone out from the foundation's letterhead. Mom couldn't refuse. She had served on the library auxiliary board since 2014. The choice was mine, and Mavis Lyman's, the library board chair, 79 years old, founding board member since 1968. 47 attendees filled the main reading room, 12 family, 18 library staff and board members, 17 community members. Mavis opened the ceremony at 11:47. Marjorie sat in the back row in a dark green coat, her silver hair cut in a sharp bob. Beside her was Eliza Hollander, her partner, holding a weathered leather portfolio with a brass clasp. Mom arrived in a pale ecru sweater she'd bought for church. Dad's tie was crooked, the same dark blue he'd worn to my college graduation. Tiffany was absent. The state's attorney's office had requested she not leave Jodavious County during the active criminal proceeding. Reed Roosh was absent too. He'd moved out of their condo 3 weeks earlier and was sleeping at his brother's place in Stockton. Aunt Delphine sat next to me in the second row. She squeezed my hand once. She didn't let go. Mavis introduced the dedication. Pearl Whitlock served on this library board from 1968 to 2005. She was the head of the children's section from 1972 to 1993. She read aloud to 2 generations of Galena children. She quietly funded summer reading prizes for 31 straight years out of her own teacher's pension. We are here today to dedicate the Children's Reading Wing in her name, Pearl Whitlock Reading Wing, and to recognize the woman who made the renovation possible, Pearl's granddaughter, Darcy Whitlock, Director of Business Development at Hadley and Bristol Commercial Construction, Chicago. I stood. I walked to the front. My hands didn't shake. I spoke for 6 minutes. Plain, calm voice. I told them about Pearl's brick house on Stagecoach Road. I told them she'd taught me to read a budget at age 11. I told them she'd read me 407 storybook chapters. During the summer, I broke my collarbone in 1989. I told them every library card birthday gift she gave me. I told them that everything I'd built since I'd left Galena at 22, I'd built because Pearl Whitlock had taught me what loyalty actually looks like. I closed with this. Pearl asked me once to keep my family together. She didn't tell me what that would cost. She let me figure it out. Today, on her wing, I want to say thank you for telling me to figure it out. The answer was simpler than I expected. I sat down. The room clapped. Aunt Delphine squeezed my hand again. Then Marjorie stood, slowly. She walked to the front. She carried the weathered leather portfolio with her. Mavis, Mrs. Whitlock, Mr. Whitlock, library board members, friends. My name is Marjorie Hollister Strand. I drafted Pearl Whitlock's medical proxy in 1993. I drafted her will in 2005. I drafted one final document in 2007 that I have been holding for exactly 19 years and 3 weeks. Pearl asked me to deliver it only if it became necessary. She opened the portfolio. She removed a manila envelope, yellowed at the edges. She removed Pearl's 2-page handwritten letter, the ink the color of old denim. She read it aloud. Marjorie, if you are reading this aloud in front of my family, then it became necessary. I am sorry. I always hoped Darcy would not need this letter. In March of 1976, my daughter Rita, then 24, forged my signature on a check for $4,200 to pay off her own credit cards. I covered the check. I did not press charges. I loved her. I also knew what she was. I have spent the years since watching her repeat the pattern with smaller stakes. I never thought she would teach the same lesson to her own daughter. If she has, please give Darcy what comes next. Tell her I loved her. Tell her the math was always settled in her favor. The room was very quiet. Marjorie folded the letter. She removed a second document, a notarized supplemental dated September 3, 2007. She read its purpose. Pearl Whitlock and I co-executed this supplemental on the date above. It binds the parcel of 4.2 acres of Whitlock family farmland east of Galena, off Stagecoach Road, into a co-trustee structure between Marjorie Hollister Strand and the Pearl Whitlock Trust. The primary remainder beneficiary is Darcy Whitlock. Any sale, transfer, or encumbrance of this parcels without the primary beneficiary's signature is voidable from the date of recording. The parcel that the Whitlocks sold last May for $52,000 was protected by this supplemental. That sale is voidable as of the moment I file this paperwork at the recorder office Monday morning. Mom's hand gripped the chair arm in front of her. Dad closed his eyes. Marjorie removed one last item. A Polaroid photograph dated March 1976. She passed it to me. Pearl, age 46, handing Rita, age 24, a cashier's check for $4,200. Pearl smiling, Rita looking away. Pearl did not press charges then, Marjorie said quietly to the room. She wrote her library checks while she still had two hands. She loved her daughter. She also knew what her daughter was. She made provisions so that one day, when her granddaughter needed proof, the proof would be here. I stood up. I walked the 3 documents to Mavis Lyman, the forged deed photocopy, the HELOC application with the forged signature, the criminal complaint case number 26-CR-3147, filed at the Joe DeDavius County State's Attorney's Office. I spoke to the library board. I want this on the record. Pearl's parcel sale is voided. The forged deed is an active criminal complaint. The HELOC is frozen. The Pearl Whitlock Redding Wing will be funded by Hadley and Bristol Foundation in her name, by my hand. Pearl Allard repaid this debt 31 years ago. I just balanced her book. Mom's face went white. Her hand stayed on the chair arm. Dad's hand was still on his other chair arm. He didn't look up. He didn't move. Mavis Lyman took the documents. She held them for a long second. Then she spoke slowly. Thank you, Pearl, for the kind of foresight this library was built to remember. Thank you, Darcy, for honoring her. The Pearl Whitlock Redding Wing is dedicated. She sealed the ceremony. People moved into the adjacent reception room. I didn't go. Aunt Delphine stayed beside me. Marjorie and Eliza spoke with Mavis about the filing requirements for the supplemental at the recorder office Monday morning. On the way to my car, Mrs. Edith Carmichael, Mom's longtime friend at Galena Methodist, hurried up to me in the parking lot. Darcy, I had no idea about any of this. Your grandmother would be proud. I'm so sorry. I nodded. I didn't speak. I walked to the car. I drove back to Chicago. 3 hours and 14 minutes. I didn't turn on the radio. I called no one. February. The state's attorney's office opened a formal investigation. Tiffany hired a lawyer. I didn't know how she was paying for one. I didn't ask. The salon was permanently closed. The landlord had changed the locks on December 22nd. 3 employees lost their jobs 2 days before Christmas. Tiffany posted a tearful Instagram story blaming unforeseen financial circumstances, which is a creative way to spell I stole my sister's equity and it caught up with me. Reed Roosh moved out for good. He texted me once. I should have said something sooner. I'm sorry. I believed him. Sorry doesn't rewind the clock, but at least he said it. On social media, Tiffany did what Tiffany does best. She performed. Being attacked by your own family during the holidays is a pain no one talks about. Some people can't stand to see others happy. Family should be about love, not lawyers. She never mentioned the forgery. She never mentioned the HELOC. She never mentioned my name. But Aunt Delphine did. Under one of Tiffany's posts, the one about family being about love, Delphine wrote a single comment. Tell the full story, Tiffany. All of it. Tiffany deleted it in 10 minutes, but screenshots travel. Delphine told me later that 3 relatives texted her asking what she'd meant. She'd told them the truth simply, without drama. Reed Rausch confirmed the rest, quietly. Through his own lawyer, he provided a chain of text messages between him and Tiffany. Messages where she'd discussed the deed transfer, the forged signature, and her plan to open the HELOC before anyone noticed. He didn't do it for me. He did it because Tiffany had threatened to lie about him, and he'd rather tell the truth first. The walls closed in slowly, legally, completely. February also. Mom called one last time. I was making pasta. Garlic bread, a glass of wine. The phone rang, and when I saw Mom on the screen, I set the spatula down and answered. I don't know why. Maybe because her voice when she spoke was different. Not commanding, not sharp, small. I didn't know about the signature, Darcy, I swear, but you knew I was paying for the house, and you told everyone it was Tiffany. Silence. I could hear her breathing. It sounded like the breathing of a woman who just climbed a flight of stairs she hadn't known she'd have to climb. I just wanted to keep her close, Mom said. She's the one who stayed. I stayed too, Mom. I stayed for 11 years paying copays. You just didn't see me because I didn't live in your zip code. She cried. Real crying. The kind that doesn't perform. The kind that just leaks out because there's no more room to hold it. I listened. I didn't comfort her. I didn't say it's okay, because it isn't okay. But I didn't twist the knife either. There's no point in cruelty. Cruelty is what they did to me. I hope you figure this out, Mom, but I can't be the one who fixes it anymore. Darcy, take care of yourself, Mom. I hung up. I went back to the stove. The pasta was slightly overcooked. I ate at the kitchen table alone. The apartment was quiet. The radiator ticked. Somewhere in Galena, my mother was sitting in a house she might lose. Realizing that the daughter she'd dismissed for 20 years was the only one who had been keeping the lights on, and the daughter she'd kept close was the one who'd set the fire. Easier to believe the lie. I washed my plate. I went to bed. I slept better than I had in months. March. Aunt Delphine drove 45 minutes from Dubuque, Iowa, across the Mississippi River to my condo. She brought news, a casserole, and a wood box. Your father sits on the porch every morning now, she said, settling into my kitchen chair with a cup of decaf. Doesn't matter the weather, rain, frost, doesn't matter. He just sits there and stares at the road. He's always been quiet. This is different, honey. I asked him what he's thinking about. He said I held the door open. I held it open for her to leave. I set my mug down. The coffee rippled. Delphine reached into her bag and pulled out an envelope. My name was on the front. Darcy girl in Dad's careful blocky handwriting. The man who never said what he felt put a stamp on it anyway. He asked me to bring you this. Wrote it by hand. Took him 3 days. She also set the wood box on the table. Brown leather, brass corners, about the size of a hardback book. And this. Your grandmother left it with me in 2005. She said one day Darcy would need to know who she was. Not just who I'd told her she was. I should have brought it sooner. I opened the wood box later that night after Delphine left. Inside was Pearl's library notebook. Brown leather cover. 37 hand-stitched pages. Gold embossed letters that read Pearl W. 1972. Inside were lists of book titles, summer reading prizes by year, the names of 2 generations of Galena children, and 1 journal entry dated December 11, 1987. If Rita ever lifts a hand against the daughter she didn't favor, the daughter who carries my fire, that daughter must know she has the law on her side. I have made sure. MHS will hold the supplement. She will know when. MHS Marjorie Hollister Strand. Wrapped in tissue next to the notebook was Pearl's emerald ring, oval emerald, thin platinum band, nick on the setting from the 1989 hospital tile drop. Dad had taken it back from Tiffany. I held the ring in my palm. It weighed almost nothing. It weighed everything. I put it in my nightstand drawer. I didn't write back to Dad yet. Not yet. I opened the letter. It was 1 page, blue ink, lined paper torn from a yellow legal pad, the kind he'd kept in his garage workshop since I was a child. He wrote that he was sorry, that he had always known I was the dependable one, the one who held things together. But he had never said it, because he had thought I didn't need to hear it. He wrote that he had been wrong, that everyone needs to hear it. He wrote that the night I had walked out, he had stood at that door for 10 minutes after I left, staring at the driveway. He had known he had made a mistake he could not undo with a sentence. At the bottom, in slightly trembling letters. You deserved better from me. I don't know if I can give it now, but I know I should have given it then. I refolded the letter. I put it in the nightstand drawer next to the ring. April. Tiffany took the plea deal. The state's attorney offered probation, 2 years supervised, full restitution of the $97,500 drawn from the HELOC, 320 hours of community service. She didn't have the money. She'd be paying it back in installments of $812.50 a month, every month for the next 120 months, minimum. Her lawyer argued financial hardship. The judge didn't seem moved. The salon was gone permanently. Tiffany was working as a receptionist at a dental office in Stockton, the next town over. Reed Rausch filed for divorce. The papers went through in March. Mom and Dad attempt to sell the family farm parcel again, this time for $38,000 to a neighbor. Marjorie filed the supplemental at the Joe Daviess County Recorder Office that Monday morning. The previous sale of $52,000 was voided. The $52,000 reverted to Mom and Dad's possession, but they had to use it to start repaying Cumberland Pacific Federal Bank for the HELOC residual. The parcel itself returned to the Pearl Whitlock Trust Corpus, where I am the primary remainder beneficiary. I have not sold it. I won't. It sits. May. 6 months since Thanksgiving. The deed has been restored. My name is back, not because I want ownership, because the fraud had to be reversed before anything else could move forward. Once it was clean, I sold my share to Mom and Dad for $1. Eliza filed the paperwork on a Tuesday afternoon. "You sure about this?" she asked, pen hovering. "I don't want the house. I want out of it." $1. Not because the share is worthless. It's worth $86,000. Because I'm done paying for a seat at a table that was never set for me. The dollar was a period at the end of a very long sentence. Small towns have long memories and short fences. When the list pendants hit the public record, it became searchable. Joe Daviess County records are online. Anyone can look them up. And in a town where everyone knows which family drives which truck and who owes what to whom, a legal flag on the Whitlock property is front-page news without ever hitting a newspaper. Aunt Delphine told me the whispers started at church. Someone from the county office mentioned it to someone else, who mentioned it to the organist, who mentioned it to Mom's friend Edith Carmichael. "Is everything okay with the house?" Edith asked Mom after Sunday service. Mom didn't answer. She picked up her purse and left the fellowship hall without eating. The story pieced itself together. People remember things. They remembered me paying for the new roof. They remembered my name on the contractor's check for the kitchen. They remembered Tiffany bragging about the salazan while I sat quiet at the end of the table. "We always wondered how they afforded the new kitchen," one neighbor told Delphine. "Now we know." Tiffany's narrative, the Instagram posts, the victim performance, crumbled in the face of county records and community memory. You can delete a Facebook comment. You can't delete a list pendants. You can cry on social media. You cannot cry in front of a public filing. The town didn't take sides. Exactly. Small towns rarely do, but they stopped asking Tiffany how the salon was doing. They stopped telling Rita what a wonderful family she had. They just stopped. In a place where attention is currency, silence is bankruptcy. Mom stopped going to church. Tiffany stopped posting. Dad kept sitting on the porch. And 3 hours away in Chicago, I went to work every morning and came home to an apartment that was quiet, small, and entirely mine. Late May, Saturday night. The apartment was quiet. I opened my nightstand drawer. Dad's letter was there, folded neatly. The emerald ring was beside it, still wrapped in the tissue he'd sent. I took the ring out, held it up to the lamp. Deep emerald, almost violet at the edges. The nick from the hospital tile was still there. Pearl had never had it repaired. She'd said the flaw was part of the story. I slid it onto my right ring finger. It fit perfectly. The way it always did when I was a kid, pretending to be grown. Pearl had told me to keep them together. I'd tried. For 19 years, I'd bent myself into the shape of that promise. I'd written checks. I'd swallowed insults. I'd stood in the back of the photo. I'd peeled the potatoes and taken the seat by the door and driven 3 hours each way to be treated like a guest in a house I was paying for. But Pearl hadn't raised me to be a doormat. She'd raised me to be a bridge, someone who connects, who carries weight, who holds things up. She just hadn't told me that even bridges have weight limits. She'd said, keep them together. She hadn't said, let them tear you apart. I think she'd understand. I think if she were sitting across from me right now, smelling like lavender and brown sugar, she would take my hand and say, you did enough, Darcy girl. You did more than enough. The following weekend, Aunt Delphine drove up again. This time, she brought Pearl's pot roast recipe, the one with the bay leaves and the burgundy, and a bottle of red wine she'd picked up at a gas station outside Rockford. Don't judge the label, she said, setting it on the counter. It was between this and a Slim Jim. We cooked together. She stood at the stove stirring while I chopped onions. And for a little while, it was like being back in Pearl's kitchen, 19 years and $397,000 ago. Your father started seeing a counselor, Delphine said, not looking up from the pot. First time in his life. Good for him. Your mother hasn't gone. She isn't blaming you anymore. She's not ready to say the words. Which words? All of them. Delphine shrugged. She's stubborn. You know that. I do. Tiffany and Reed. Officially done. Papers signed last month. I nodded. I didn't feel happy about it. I didn't feel sad. I felt the way you feel when a storm passes and you step outside and everything is wet and wrecked and still somehow lighter. Your dad misses you, Delphine said. She finally looked at me. Her eyes were soft. He won't say it right, but he does. I know. Missing me isn't the same as respecting me. No, she said. It's not. We sat at my kitchen table with the pot roast and the gas station wine and we ate. The apartment was warm. The windows were fogged from the cooking. Delphine didn't give me advice. She didn't tell me to forgive. She didn't tell me to call. She just sat across from me and ate the way Pearl used to. Present, steady, quiet in a way that says more than talking ever could. You did the right thing, Darcy girl, she said at the door. The hard thing and the right thing. So here I am, Darcy Whitlock, 41 years old, Director of Business Development at Hadley and Bristol Commercial Construction, resident of an 850-square-foot condo above Hooker's Hardware on West Randolph in the West Loop, with a drafty window and a radiator that ticks twice before it lights. I don't hate my family. I want you to hear that clearly. I don't hate them. My parents are flawed, frightened, human. My sister is selfish and desperate and small. My father is a good man who never learned to speak up. My mother is a scared woman who confused proximity with love. They're not monsters. They're just people who got used to taking from someone who never said no, until she did. I used to think loyalty meant never walking away, that keeping a promise meant keeping yourself small so other people could stay comfortable. Pearl asked me to hold this family together, and I thought that meant carrying all of it. The weight, the cost, the silence, the slap. Now I know loyalty to yourself is the first loyalty. Everything else comes after. You can love people and still refuse to let them destroy you. You can forgive without returning to the scene of the crime. You can sell your share for $1 and walk away richer than you have ever been. I don't know if I'll talk to my parents again. Maybe at Christmas. Maybe next year. I'm not closing the door. But I'm not holding it open for people who've shown me what they do when they have the chance to walk through it. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is not fight. It's not yell. It's not prove anything to anyone. It's walk out the door, close it behind you, and build something that's yours. Pearl would understand. I look at the ring on my finger. The emerald catches the light. The nick in the setting winks at me like a secret between us. I smile, and I mean it. If you're listening to this and you have ever been the person your family forgot until they remembered the math, then I hope you hear this. You don't owe anyone a refund for raising you. You can open a door for one parent and leave the door closed for the other, and that is not cruelty. That is mercy with a hinge. That's my story. And if you're still here, thank you. That means more than you know. Now I have a question for you. Would you have walked out that Thanksgiving night? Or would you have stayed and fought? Drop your answer in the comments. I read every single one. And if this story reminded you of someone who needs to hear it, share it with them. Sometimes people need to hear that they're allowed to stop giving. If you want more stories like this, check the description. There's one there I think will hit just as hard. Subscribe and I'll see you in the next.